Alright, hey everybody, today we're going to fight the Mexican War. So we're going to talk about why was annexing Texas so controversial, and Polk becomes the 11th president with what slogan. Then we'll finish it up with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which gives us three things at the end of the Mexican War. Okay, so the question was, should we annex Texas? Annexing means to bring in. So, or you can also look at it as to take over. So the question was, should we bring Texas into the United States as another state? Why was it so controversial? Because this is the North does not want to expand slavery. Adding Texas, which you know is below that Missouri Compromise line, means that you would bring in all this new territory that would be slave territory, and if you carved up Texas, it could mean up to 5 new slave states added, which would be a huge blow to the North in their representation, and it would also obviously expand slavery, which they don't want. The other issue is even bigger, that annexing Texas would mean starting a war with Mexico. So a lot of presidents are going to put off the idea. They don't want to get involved in a Mexican war and drag us through a war. So the ones that sort of put it off, don't deal with it, are Jackson, Van Buren, and Tyler. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty big deal. Show you a couple of pictures. First, here is the territory we're talking about, Texas. Okay, this is the land that they claimed. They're going to claim this territory, the Rio Grande River, and everything above that up into what we call the United States at this time, okay, which was Missouri territory. So you've got all this land. You see here is the present day line of Texas. So the land that Texas claimed also included New Mexico and parts of Colorado today. Okay, so they have a large chunk of territory, which is why I said you could have up to maybe 5 new slave states coming in. Okay, all right, the other interesting issue is the Oregon Trail. So Oregon is a territory on the Pacific Ocean that once reaches as far as the northern Alaskan border. So at one time, 4 nations lay claim to it: Spain, Russia, Great Britain, and the U.S. Currently, the British have the largest stake in it because it does expand up into Canada, that territory, and the British, of course, you know, are going to be in Canada at this time. So it says U.S. claims, we claim that we own this Oregon territory because of Lewis and Clark's expedition. And since the opening of the West, we've had over 5,000 Americans travel across the Oregon Trail to farm in this area. Okay, so we have Americans pushing west, and this would be northwest into the Oregon Territory. As to a picture of that, here is a map of this Oregon Trail I'm talking about, and Oregon Territory. So all of this is Oregon Territory. And you see here's the Oregon Trail that goes along to Oregon City. Okay, starts at Independence, Missouri, goes all the way across the Rocky Mountains into Oregon. So all of this is considered Oregon country, and it also extended up here, although this map doesn't show that, but up into Canada, up to Alaska. So the Canadians, which aren't Canadians yet, but the British there, are going to say, no, you can't have all that territory. Okay, here is a great picture of pioneers crossing the Oregon Trail, and that's a really cool picture. You see the mountains in the distance, the Rocky Mountains. Very, very difficult. See this guy's out pushing, and the ruts from the wagons, they would get stuck. They would have breaks in their wheels, axle breaks, all kinds of problems and issues. A very arduous, long journey across the Oregon Trail. But we do have Americans doing that. It says, we believe, remember, in our manifest destiny, that God has given us this territory, and we should be able to take all of Oregon, annex Texas, and persuade Mexico to also, while they're at it, give up California. So we've got some huge goals here to add to the United States: Oregon, Texas, and possibly even California. Okay? All right, so that's that. So the election of 44, this election will change everything. All right, so it says the Democrats are deadlocked whether they should nominate Van Buren or run John C. Calhoun for president. They choose instead a lesser known candidate by the name of James K. Polk. Okay, this is my book on Polk that I've read. I really like him. So he's a cool character, primarily because I prefer underdogs, and he was an underdog. He was called the Black Horse because, or the Dark Horse, because in racing, like, a dark horse would be the one that you never think is going to win and comes up in the end and steals the show. So he's from Tennessee. The Whigs choose Henry Clay. Recall Clay, we've had him before. The American system, same Clay as a great compromiser. Okay, kind of put down Jackson's issue with the force bill by compromising over the issue of the tariff of abominations. So here's Clay again of Kentucky, and it says the issue that Clay had, though, running, was he was a flip-flopper. He would change his mind back and forth on the issue of should we annex Texas. He would say yes for a while, then would say no, yes, no, yes. And people were kind of sick of that. Okay, so here's Polk. I'm in Polk, okay? And the dark horse is going to run for the Democrats. And we have Henry Clay again, just in case you've forgotten him. Here he is, the great compromiser. So he'll run as the Whig. Remember, he instituted the Whig Party against Jackson. The Democrats will run Polk. Polk is going to run on an election campaign that's quite catchy, and it is 54, 40, or fight. 54, 40, or fight. And he's going to refer to the line of latitude that marks the border between Oregon Territory and Russian Alaska. And he's going to advocate annexing Texas too, and perhaps negotiating for California. So he's going all in, all chips in. He's going to say, hey, we're not only going to take Oregon, we're going to take the whole Oregon Territory up into Canada, up to the 54-40 line, I'll show you, and up to Russian Alaska. And we're going to take Texas, annex it, bring it in, and we're going to negotiate for California. Okay, so, oh no, I didn't put my 54-40 or fight picture. Okay, hold on, it's over here somewhere. Here it is. So you can see it. Here is 54 line up into Canada. This is Canada. This is British North America. It's Canada today. All this is the British territory. Here is the current American line between us and Canada. So here's the Oregon Trail to Oregon Territory, but it goes up into here, as I was telling you earlier. Polk's going to say, hey, let's take the whole shebang up to the 54-40 line and claim that for America. Okay, here's the 54-40 line. So, to me, he's a little like a Donald Trump, because he's going to claim this 54-40 line. You know, we're going all in, we're going to take it. Much like Donald Trump campaigned against what he called Crooked Hillary, and said to her in a debate that she was going to be in jail if he became president. Just today, he announced, in fact, no, he's not going to pursue her and push any charges against her. The point is, Polk's going to do the same thing once elected. He's going to back down. But for right now, just remember 54, 40, or fight. Northerners and Southerners like Polk, both because he's going to promise to expand the country in both ways. To the north with Oregon, which will bring in free area. To the south with Texas, which will bring in slave. So pretty much most people are happy because he's at least balancing it out. He doesn't in the end, but that's his promise. Okay, so he decides to back down from his 5440 speech after he's president and negotiates with Britain to settle for the southern half of Oregon just to avoid war. So this is where we get the territory that I showed you on the Oregon map. He negotiates for this area, does not fight a war with Canada to get the 5440 line. Okay, so results in the Oregon Territory being divided at the 49th parallel, not the 54th, 49th parallel. All right, it says just before Polk takes office, Tyler, who was going out, pushes annexation of Texas through Congress. Texas joins us in 1845. Mexico is outraged because they're claiming this territory and they're going to break diplomatic relations with us. Polk comes in as president and sends John Slidell as an envoy to Mexico to try to negotiate, to persuade Mexico to sell California and New Mexico to us and settle this dispute over the Mexican-Texan border. Okay, so Polk's kind of itching for war here. He sends Zachary Taylor and troops to the Rio Grande into Mexican territory. So they cross the river. Okay, April 24th, 1846, the Mexican army pushes them back across the river into American territory and captures 11, killing them. Woo! So Polk's going to put on his war hat now, and he's going to say, I'm not having any of this. American blood has been spilt or shed on American soil. Northern Whigs, including a young Abraham Lincoln, will oppose this war, but Congress passes the Declaration anyway. So Polk goes to war with Mexico because even though we sent Taylor across the border, he's pushed back into America, and he's pushed back into America by the Mexican army. They kill 11 of our men on American soil. Polk says, no, we're not having any of this. Now, technically, the Mexicans don't see it that way because they still see Texas as theirs. Okay, so Texas. Here's Taylor, Zachary Taylor, who crosses the line into Mexico and then is pushed back. I guess that's all I had to show you on that. Okay, so war. So Stephen Kearny, with 1,500 U.S. soldiers, successfully in this war with Mexico, takes Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Southern California. Okay. We will finish up with John C. Fremont leads soldiers and civilians to overthrow Mexican rule in Northern California. So you remember, Kearny is Southern California, Fremont is Northern California. And they're going to claim California as an independent republic and call it the Bear Flag Republic. So some pictures of that. Fremont, remember, Northern California. I personally think he's kind of hot. So here he is, John C. Fremont, Northern California. In the war, Bear Flag Revolt. Here's a really cool picture of that. You see they're holding the bear flag. Okay, there were bear in California. And they're going to call themselves the Bear Flag Republic and institute their new flag, which is here. To this very day, California has this flag. Okay, so long history of that. All right, so Fremont frees Northern California with this revolt. Then Zachary Taylor's force of 6,000 men drives the Mexican army from Texas back across the Rio Grande River, and he wins at Buena Vista. General Winfield Scott is then sent by Polk to put the nail in the coffin, seal the deal. He invades central Mexico, takes over Mexico City, and here's Winfield Scott. Not so attractive. And that is September 1847. So we take over the Mexican capital, we win the war. Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is signed in 1848. Mexico would recognize the Rio Grande as the southern border of Texas. That's the official border now. We will now possess California and New Mexico for the asking price of $15 million. So we get it for $15 million from Mexico, and Manifest Destiny is now realized.